Imagine being locked inside a machine where every scream, every cry for mercy, became part of a twisted melody played for a cheering crowd, and the worst part? Historians believe this horrifying device may have actually existed. Deep within the shadows of ancient history lies a story so disturbing that many people refuse to believe it could be real. It was not merely a weapon, nor just an execution device, it was something far more terrifying. According to legends from ancient Greece, there once existed a monstrous machine designed to transform human suffering into music. Victims trapped inside it would scream in agony while hidden mechanisms altered their cries into eerie, haunting sounds that resembled songs or the cries of mythical beasts. The device became known as the Brazen Bull, an invention attributed to the Greek sculptor Perillos during the reign of the cruel tyrant Phalaris of Acragas in Sicily around the 6th century BCE. Unlike ordinary methods of execution, this machine was designed not only to kill but to entertain. It blurred the line between torture and spectacle in a way that horrifies modern audiences even today. The bull itself was said to be made entirely of bronze, hollow inside, and large enough to imprison a human being. A fire would be lit beneath the metal beast until the temperature inside became unbearable. But the true horror was in the bull's head, where a system of pipes and resonators allegedly transformed the victim's desperate screams into musical tones. To the crowd outside, the horrifying cries sounded almost beautiful. Ancient writers claimed spectators would gather to witness the spectacle as if attending a performance. Whether every detail is true or exaggerated by historians, the legend reveals something deeply unsettling about humanity's fascination with cruelty. The idea that suffering could be turned into entertainment echoes through history in many terrifying ways. What makes the Brazen Bull unforgettable is not only the brutality of death but the psychological horror behind its design. Someone intentionally imagined a machine where agony became art. Someone engineered pain into performance. And perhaps the most chilling part of all is that the inventor himself would soon become the first person trapped inside his own creation. To understand why such a horrifying machine could exist, one must first understand the man who supposedly ordered it into existence, Phalaris, the ruthless ruler of Acragas. Ancient historians described him as a tyrant consumed by power, feared across Sicily for his brutality and merciless punishments. During a time when rulers often maintained authority through terror, Phalaris stood apart for the sheer cruelty associated with his reign. Stories surrounding him painted a picture of a leader who believed fear was the strongest weapon a ruler could possess. Executions were not simply punishments under his rule, they were theatrical displays meant to terrify the population into obedience. Public suffering became a tool of government. Citizens learned quickly that disobedience could lead not just to death, but to unimaginable torment. Into this atmosphere of fear came Perillos, a skilled metalworker and sculptor seeking favor from the tyrant. Hoping to impress Phalaris and secure wealth and status, Perillos presented his masterpiece, a massive bronze bull designed specifically for execution. But this was no ordinary torture device. Perillos proudly explained that the pipes hidden within the bull's head would transform human screams into sounds resembling the bellowing of an angry animal mixed with haunting musical notes. According to legend, he even demonstrated the acoustic system to Phalaris, describing how spectators would hear melodies instead of cries. The tyrant listened carefully, fascinated not only by the cruelty of the invention but by its psychological impact. This machine would allow him to project absolute dominance while masking horror beneath a strange form of beauty. Ancient accounts suggest Phalaris admired the ingenuity of the device but was disturbed by the sadistic enthusiasm of its creator. In a twist that became central to the legend, Phalaris reportedly decided that the inventor deserved to experience his own creation first. The moment revealed something deeply ironic: even a tyrant capable of immense cruelty found the machine excessively horrifying. The story would become one of history's darkest examples of poetic justice, where the architect of suffering became its first victim. As the legend goes, after hearing Perillos proudly explain how the Brazen Bull worked, Phalaris made a chilling request. He asked the inventor to climb inside the machine and demonstrate how the sound system transformed screams into music. Perillos, believing he had won the tyrant's approval, eagerly obeyed. He crawled into the hollow bronze chamber, unaware that his fate had already been decided. Once the door was sealed shut, Phalaris ordered a fire lit beneath the bull. At first, the flames were small, just enough to heat the metal slowly. Ancient writers claimed that as the bronze walls began to burn his flesh, Perillos screamed in terror and agony. Outside, however, the cries emerged through the bull's pipes as haunting, flute-like sounds. The invention had worked exactly as intended. For Phalaris, this demonstration was enough. Before Perillos died completely, the tyrant supposedly ordered the bull opened so the inventor could be removed. But mercy was never the intention. According to some versions of the story, Perillos was then thrown from a cliff to his death. The irony was horrifying. The man who imagined a machine capable of transforming suffering into entertainment became trapped within his own nightmare. Historians debate whether every detail truly happened, but the tale endured for centuries because of its symbolic power. It served as a warning about unchecked ambition, cruelty, and the dangers of creating instruments of pain for personal gain. Yet the story did not end there. If the legends are true, the Brazen Bull continued to be used against enemies of the state, criminals, rebels, and anyone unfortunate enough to fall into the tyrant's disfavor. Each execution became both punishment and performance. Crowds reportedly gathered to watch smoke rise from the nostrils of the bronze beast while distorted cries echoed across the square like terrifying music. Whether myth or reality, the image burned itself into human imagination. Few execution methods in history combined psychological terror, engineering, and theatrical horror in such a disturbing way. The Brazen Bull became more than a machine, it became a symbol of how cruelty can evolve into spectacle when power loses all humanity. The terrifying brilliance of the Brazen Bull lay not only in its cruelty but in its engineering. Ancient descriptions suggest the machine was carefully designed to maximize both suffering and spectacle. The bull itself was supposedly cast entirely from bronze, a metal chosen for its ability to conduct heat rapidly. Its hollow interior was large enough to fit a single human being crouched inside. A small door, cleverly concealed in the structure, allowed guards to lock victims within before igniting a fire beneath the statue. As the flames intensified, the bronze walls became scorching hot, effectively turning the interior into an oven. Victims trapped inside would experience unbearable heat long before death finally arrived. But the most horrifying feature was hidden within the head of the bull. Ancient writers claimed Perillos had constructed an elaborate system of tubes, pipes, and acoustic chambers connected to their mouth and nostrils. When victims screamed, their cries traveled through these mechanisms and emerged transformed into strange musical sounds resembling the bellowing of an enraged animal mixed with haunting melodies. Spectators outside would not hear ordinary screams, they would hear what sounded like the singing of the bronze beast itself. Some historians believe these details may have been exaggerated over time, yet the concept remains deeply disturbing because it reveals how engineering could be weaponized for psychological horror. The bull was designed not simply to kill but to erase the humanity of its victims. Their voices ceased to sound human. Their suffering became part of a grotesque performance. Ancient accounts even claimed smoke from the fire emerged through the bull's nostrils, creating the illusion that the beast was alive and breathing. To onlookers, it may have resembled a monstrous creature devouring people from within. Whether fully accurate or partially mythologized, the Brazen Bull stands as one of the earliest stories of technology being used to transform pain into entertainment. It demonstrates a terrifying truth about human history: cruelty often becomes more dangerous when combined with creativity and spectacle. The machine's horror was psychological as much as physical, forcing victims into a nightmare where even their final cries no longer belonged to them. Today, the idea of crowds gathering to watch torture sounds horrifying beyond imagination, yet throughout much of human history, public executions were treated as major social events. In ancient civilizations, punishments were often carried out before large audiences not only to enforce laws but to send messages of fear and power. The Brazen Bull fit perfectly into this brutal culture of spectacle. Executions were meant to be seen, heard, and remembered. The suffering of one person became a warning to thousands. In ancient Greece and later Rome, public arenas hosted violent displays where criminals, prisoners, and enemies faced gruesome deaths before cheering crowds. Spectators viewed these events with a mixture of fascination, horror, and excitement. The Brazen Bull elevated this cruelty into something almost theatrical. Instead of ordinary screams, audiences reportedly heard eerie musical cries echoing from the bronze beast. The device transformed execution into performance art, blurring the boundary between punishment and entertainment in a deeply disturbing way. Historians often debate whether stories about the bull were exaggerated by later writers attempting to portray tyrants as monsters. Yet even if partly fictionalized, the legend reflects real historical attitudes toward violence and authority. Ancient rulers understood that fear could maintain control more effectively than kindness. Spectacles of suffering reinforced the idea that rulers possessed absolute power over life and death. Crowds witnessing such punishments were reminded of what happened to those who challenged authority. The psychological effect extended far beyond the victim. The Brazen Bull also reveals humanity's dark curiosity toward pain. People have long been drawn to shocking spectacles, especially when wrapped in ritual or performance. Even modern media sometimes reflects this fascination through violent entertainment and sensational stories. What makes the legend endure is not merely the brutality of the machine itself but the uncomfortable realization that audiences once gathered willingly to witness it. The crowd became part of the horror. They listened as agony transformed into music and watched smoke rise from the bronze nostrils while a human being burned alive inside. The machine forced society itself to participate in cruelty, turning execution into communal entertainment. That collective fascination with suffering is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of all. For centuries, historians and scholars have debated one haunting question: did the Brazen Bull truly exist, or was it merely a terrifying legend invented to symbolize tyranny and cruelty? Ancient sources such as Pindar, Diodorus Siculus, and Lucian all reference the story in various forms, suggesting that the legend was widely known across the ancient world. However, concrete archaeological evidence proving the existence of the machine has never been discovered. No surviving fragments of the bull have ever been identified, leaving historians uncertain about how much of the tale is historical fact and how much may have been exaggerated over time. Some experts believe the Brazen Bull could indeed have existed because ancient civilizations possessed the metalworking knowledge necessary to construct such a device. Greek craftsmen were highly skilled in bronze casting, and acoustic engineering was not beyond their capabilities. The idea of creating pipes to alter sound may seem advanced, but ancient inventors often experimented with mechanical and musical technologies. Others argue that the more theatrical elements of the story, especially the transformation of screams into beautiful melodies, were likely embellished by storytellers seeking to emphasize the cruelty of Phalaris. Yet even if parts of the story were exaggerated, the existence of brutal execution devices in ancient history is well documented. Civilizations across the world invented horrifying punishments designed not only to kill but to intimidate entire populations. The Brazen Bull may therefore represent a symbolic combination of real torture practices amplified through myth and storytelling. Ancient writers frequently used dramatic narratives to portray tyrants as monstrous figures beyond ordinary human morality. In that sense, whether entirely real or partly fictional, the legend served a powerful purpose. It became a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the corruption of human creativity when stripped of compassion. The uncertainty surrounding the bull only adds to its horror. Because there is no definitive proof disproving the story either, the possibility lingers in the imagination. Somewhere in ancient Sicily, perhaps, a bronze beast once stood over roaring flames while crowds listened to distorted cries echoing through metal pipes. The lack of certainty keeps the legend alive, suspended between myth and reality, where it continues to disturb people more than 2,000 years later. What makes the story of the Brazen Bull so unforgettable is not merely the physical pain involved but the psychological terror embedded within its design. Most execution devices throughout history focused solely on death. The Brazen Bull, however, transformed suffering into spectacle in a way that attacked the victim's humanity itself. Victims trapped inside were denied even the dignity of their own voices. Their screams became entertainment for others, distorted into strange music through cold mechanical design. Modern psychologists might describe this as a terrifying form of dehumanization. The victim ceased to exist as a person and instead became part of a performance. This psychological element may explain why the legend continues to disturb people centuries later. Human beings naturally empathize with cries of pain. Screams trigger emotional responses because they signal danger and suffering. The Brazen Bull twisted that instinct by disguising agony as art. It forced spectators to experience horror and fascination simultaneously. Some ancient audiences may even have interpreted the sounds as evidence of divine punishment, further distancing themselves emotionally from the victim inside. The machine essentially transformed death into ritual theater. The symbolism of the bull itself also carried powerful meaning in ancient cultures. Bulls often represented strength, dominance, sacrifice, and divine power. By placing victims inside a bronze bull, the execution became more than punishment, it became symbolic destruction by an unstoppable beast. Smoke rising from the nostrils created the illusion of a living creature consuming human beings alive. Such imagery would have deeply affected ancient audiences, reinforcing fear and obedience through psychological shock. The story also raises disturbing questions about human creativity. The inventor of the Brazen Bull was not creating art for beauty or technology for progress. He used intelligence and craftsmanship to maximize terror. History repeatedly shows that innovation can be turned toward cruelty when morality disappears. The legend endures because it reflects a dark truth about civilization itself: human beings are capable of combining imagination with brutality in horrifying ways. The Brazen Bull was terrifying not because it was primitive, but because it was sophisticated. It represented calculated suffering engineered for emotional impact. That fusion of art, science, and cruelty makes the story feel disturbingly modern even today. Although the Brazen Bull stands among history's most horrifying legends, it was far from the only torture device designed to inspire fear through spectacle. Across centuries and civilizations, rulers and authorities created increasingly brutal methods of punishment intended not merely to kill but to send messages of absolute power. Ancient Rome crucified prisoners publicly along roadsides to terrify rebellious populations. Medieval Europe later developed devices such as the rack, the Iron Maiden, and execution wheels that prolonged suffering while spectators watched in horror. In many cases, these punishments became public ceremonies attended by entire communities. What separates the Brazen Bull from many other devices is its theatrical nature. Most torture methods focused on physical destruction, but the Brazen Bull manipulated sound, imagery, and symbolism to create psychological terror as well. It turned pain into performance. Yet history repeatedly shows humanity's fascination with blending punishment and spectacle. During the Roman gladiatorial games, crowds cheered as fighters killed each other in arenas built specifically for mass entertainment. In medieval Europe, executions often attracted vendors selling food and drinks, turning death into a strange social gathering. Even in more recent centuries, public hangings drew enormous crowds eager to witness the event firsthand. These examples reveal a disturbing aspect of human psychology. Societies sometimes normalize violence when wrapped in ritual, authority, or entertainment. The Brazen Bull became a powerful symbol because it embodied this tendency in its most extreme form. Its legend reminds us that cruelty is not always hidden in darkness. Sometimes it is displayed openly, celebrated, and even admired by those in power. Historians often study such devices not merely to understand violence but to understand the societies that created them. Torture methods reflect cultural values, fears, and systems of control. The existence, or even the imagined existence, of the Brazen Bull suggests a world where rulers sought domination through emotional shock and public fear. The machine's horrifying reputation survived because it represented something larger than one execution method. It symbolized the terrifying potential of human imagination when empathy disappears. While modern societies condemn such brutality, the legend still resonates because it forces uncomfortable reflection on how easily people can become desensitized to suffering when cruelty is transformed into spectacle. Thousands of years after the fall of ancient Greece, the legend of the Brazen Bull continues to captivate audiences around the world. It appears in documentaries, horror stories, historical discussions, films, and online videos because it taps into something deeply unsettling within the human imagination. Part of this fascination comes from the sheer uniqueness of the device. Many historical punishments were brutal, but few combined engineering, art, symbolism, and torture in such a horrifyingly creative way. The image of a giant bronze bull transforming screams into eerie music feels almost too disturbing to be real, which makes people unable to stop thinking about it. Another reason the legend survives is because it blurs the boundary between myth and history. Historians cannot fully confirm or completely deny its existence. That uncertainty allows the story to grow larger over time. People naturally fear what might have happened more than what is definitively proven. The Brazen Bull exists in that terrifying space between documented history and nightmare. Modern audiences are also drawn to stories revealing the darker side of ancient civilizations. Many people imagine ancient Greece primarily through philosophy, democracy, and beautiful art. The Brazen Bull shatters that romantic image by exposing the possibility of extreme cruelty beneath the surface of civilization. It reminds us that societies capable of remarkable achievements were also capable of horrifying violence. In a strange way, the story feels disturbingly relevant even today. Modern technology can still be used for manipulation, psychological control, and entertainment built around suffering. While society no longer burns people inside bronze statues, the underlying questions raised by the legend remain powerful. Why are humans fascinated by horror? How far will people go to maintain power? What happens when creativity loses morality? These questions ensure that the story never truly disappears. Every generation rediscovers the legend and reacts with the same mixture of disbelief and terror. The Brazen Bull survives not simply because it was gruesome but because it symbolizes timeless fears about cruelty, authority, and human nature itself. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth: the darkest inventions in history were not created by monsters from another world. They were created by human beings. Whether the Brazen Bull was entirely real, partially exaggerated, or purely symbolic, its legacy remains one of the most terrifying stories ever connected to the ancient world. More than a torture device, it became a symbol of how power, creativity, and cruelty can merge into something truly monstrous. The machine represented a chilling transformation of human suffering into spectacle. Victims trapped inside the bronze beast lost not only their lives but their voices, their humanity reduced to eerie sounds meant to entertain spectators outside. That horrifying concept continues to haunt people centuries later because it reveals the terrifying extremes of human imagination. The legend also carries an enduring moral lesson. Phalaris, the inventor who created the machine to gain favor and wealth, became its first victim. His fate serves as a warning about the dangers of using intelligence and creativity without ethics or compassion. Throughout history, technological advancement has always carried a double edge. Human innovation can heal, inspire, and improve civilization, but it can also magnify cruelty when guided by power and fear. The Brazen Bull symbolizes that dark possibility. Ancient stories often survived because they captured emotional truths larger than literal facts. Even if details changed over generations, the legend endured because it reflected genuine fears about tyranny and dehumanization. It reminded audiences that rulers who rely entirely on terror eventually become remembered not for greatness, but for horror. Today, the image of the bronze beast still appears in books, films, and internet discussions because it touches something primal in the human mind. The idea of screams transformed into music feels deeply unnatural, almost cursed. It represents a world where suffering becomes entertainment and empathy disappears entirely. In the end, that may be why the story refuses to die. The Brazen Bull is more than an ancient execution device, it is a mirror reflecting humanity's darkest instincts. It warns us how easily power can corrupt creativity and how quickly societies can normalize cruelty when fear replaces compassion. And perhaps the most terrifying realization of all is this: every monstrous invention in history began as an idea in someone's mind.